The End of the Jewish War, from the Slavonic, Aramaic, Josephus. Header, Masada I, ruled by Eleazar, Sicarii, and the history of the Zealots. The name of the city was Masada. Their commander was Eleazar, a powerful man, grandson of Judas the Galilean, concerning whom we have recounted how he received the Jews so that they would not submit to Caesar. He collected all the shameless around him, the so-called Sicarii, or Daggerman, but they were killing all those people who wished for peace as their enemies, and taking their property and burning their homes, saying that by their weakness they were betraying an adequately armed liberty and submitting to a servile yoke. These sayings were a pretext to conceal their hard-heartedness, wishing to conceal their love of plunder by these words, and they showed by their deeds. For the citizens did their will and complied with their plan, commencing war against the Romans. But they showed their character and laid false charges against them, and harmed them more. For this was a time for the birth of every kind of wickedness, so that there would not remain a single abominable act that wouldn't appear in their generation. For the torment of our whole land was by divine condemnation. For thus Elohim's anger unsettled all, both private and common. And they vied with one another not in good works, but lawlessness and immorality, to determine who could rob and plunder the most, who could do the most violence, who could plan the most wickedness, who could disgrace another's bed, and generally speaking, ruin the most people, and achieve the most crime and lawlessness. First, the Sicarii began the whole disgrace against their fellow countrymen, leaving no ruinous word, no secret deed. But John had a malicious character, even beyond them. That's John of Giscala. For he not only killed all those who had just and superior plans for the fatherland, but he carried out every sort of foulness that a man had ever accomplished, rejecting Elohim completely. He took unlawful food banned by the law, and rejected purity. And again, Simon, son of Gioras, what evil did he not commit? Or what free people did he leave without torment, not respecting friendship or love, or kindred, or Elohim's servants, or the old or the young? And again, Idumean insolence was twice as bad, for those disgraceful men both killed the high priests, abolished every form of piety, and introduced utter lawlessness. From them arose the race of the Zealots, so called for reversing the sense of the word. For those are called zealots who are zealous for justice and worthy deeds. But these, abandoning that zeal, were zealous for every disgusting and foul deed. Whatever evil actions are remembered from Adam even until now, about which we've heard by hearsay or found in books, they committed them all, but they met a fitting end. Elohim repaid them appropriate retribution, and he released on them every torture and every kind of torment that human nature can undergo, and, up to the end of their lives, tormented them with various tortures. These evil ones died by evil means. But in truth, someone will say that they were not tormented, as by their deeds they deserved it. Masada II, Silva's strategy versus the Zealots, and Masada's history. The Roman commander, Lucius Flavius Silva, came with all his forces to Masada. He fenced it around with walls so that not even one person would be able to escape, and he posted guards. He found a place suitable for taking the city, and he dug in where the stones of the cities came close to the mountain. It was cruel labor to bring in the necessary supplies, and they were carrying the food from far away with much sweat, and water also for all the soldiers, there being no well nearby. But Silva provided for all that. He began to make embankments, for he needed much skill and effort. Such was the strength of the city on account of its size. The rock in itself is round and hard and large and high. Around it ran ravines, deep and unfathomable. And there were 2 roads like footpaths. On either side of them were deep chasms. In no way could cattle pass through there, but only one man on foot. If someone is coming toward him, they cannot pass, but one must stand on one leg and the other pass, going sideways. But if someone slips, not a bone of his will be found. The high priest Jonathan first built a simple fort on it and called it Masada. Later, King Herod, seeing the nature of the place, hurried greatly to develop it and built walls around the circular summit up to 7 stadies long, all of white stone, 12 cubits in height, 5 cubits in breadth. He erected 37 towers, buildings and palaces. The earth on that summit was soft and fertile. The king gave it to the citizens for tilling, so that should they ever be besieged and food should be short and not available from outside, they would, by plowing that land, have plenty. And he erected 4 towers by his palace, 60 cubits high, and he built baths and many patterned porticos and white marble pillars to decorate the palace and to fortify it. And in many places he excavated the rock and made a cistern, like a lake for keeping rainwater. And a road was carved through the tender rock, and by it they would ride and walk even up to the crest of the summit unseen. Thus by the hands of men the city was fortified. The stores within of wheat and other products never rotted, but were splendid and whole, always providing wine, oil, dates, and produce of all kinds. It had been many years since the foundation of the city, and more than 70 years from Herod's reconstruction. When the Romans captured it, all the products that Herod had preserved in fear of a war, they found whole. This comes from a good composition of the air, for by its height the place is apart from all earthly trouble. Here were found all the arms deposited by Herod, 20,000, and breastplates, and shields also, and everything else in like quantity, including unwrought iron, copper, and lead, even beyond counting. Herod had prepared all, that for his own sake concerned with 2 fears. 1, from the Jews, that they might someday overthrow him and bring in their earlier kings, whom he had driven out. And 2, from Cleopatra, crueler than the Jews, who was reigning in Egypt, for she had often spoken with Antony, begging him to kill Herod and present to her the kingdom of the Jews. And so it's worthy of astonishment that Antony, being enslaved by his desire of her and doing everything she told him to do, but this one command he didn't obey. It was on account of the fear that Herod equipped Masada, as we have said. Masada 3. Engines of war. Silva, dismayed by backfire. The Roman commander, having enclosed all that place, found one place on which it would be possible to make embankments. For the end of that rock on the western side was wide in the ravine, and the height of the city from that ravine was 300 cubits. On that end of the rock he ordered his troops to make an end embankment. Briskly, with all their strength, they made an embankment, 10 cubits high, for the earth would not hold if higher. Laying down stones, they raised it a further 5 cubits, and then set up battering rams and catapults and javelin throwers, by which they beat all the fighters off the ramparts. The battering rams beat often and destroyed part of the wall. The Sicarii within made other walls, not of stone but of wood on both sides, and earth in the middle. As the battering ram beat, the earth became more solid, being freshly poured. Silva, despairing of taking the wall by battering rams, thought of burning it by fire. But when the flames flared up, a terrible storm arose from the north and blew the fire back on the Romans. When the latter fled from the flames and the Roman embankments and wall-breaking machines were burned down, the Jews joyfully called out as if they had prevailed. But then suddenly a strong south wind blew up, turned the flames back on the Jews, and burned down their wall from its base to its top. Immediately, the Romans, having understood this as divine assistance, returned rejoicing to their camp intending to attack the next day. At night, they posted guards to keep close watch, that no one should escape. The next, Eleazar plans suicide for all on Masada. His speech, Part 1. Eleazar decided not to flee, nor did he order anyone else to flee. He saw the walls burning, and being unable to think how to save them all, and imagining what evils the Romans would do to them should they be captured, decided they should all die equally. And assembling his most intrepid companions, he spoke words to them such as the following: "Oh, good men, long ago we decided unanimously to serve no one else, neither the Romans nor anyone, only Elohim. For he alone is the master of men, just and true. And now the time has come, bidding us to consummate that decision indeed, so that we will not be shamed. For long ago we didn't choose a trouble-free slavery, but now we realize that if they take us alive, we shall have both slavery and unbearable torment, since we revolted before all others, and we are the last left fighting against them. But I think this is Elohim's gift to us, that he has shown us a free death. And in this way he has not given us up into the hands of foreigners, but he has brought us the cover of night, in which we can plan the most expedient course. Freedom is a manly death with those we love. Enemies who boast they will capture us alive cannot prevent us from this. But if we rally to resist them, our opposition will then be in vain, for we cannot overcome. For it behooved us at first, when we were fighting for freedom and saw Elohim's plan with our own eyes in the house of Elohim, we begin to understand it and to realize that the Jewish race from ancient times was loved and chosen by Elohim, but is now condemned to perish. For if Elohim still beheld us with gentle eyes, or had but a slight anger against us, he would not have overlooked such great loss of life, nor given over such a sacred city to fire and destruction, nor would he have allowed foul hands and flame on his holy dwelling. Eleazar's speech number 2, retribution from Elohim only. But we, alone of the whole Jewish race, hope to remain at liberty as if guiltless before Elohim, and not associated with the iniquity of our compatriots. Now you see how our vain hopes expose us. For neither the city's strength has benefited us, nor the abundant supplies, nor tile armaments innumerable, nor all the other preparations. For Elohim has invisibly taken away from us every hope of salvation. You saw how the flames were falling on the enemy and turned back against our walls by divine providence. This is the divine wrath, which has accumulated against us because of the multitude of our iniquities and because our culture has behaved lawlessly against him, as you also know. Our transgressions ring in the ears of all. I think this will ring on even after us, but for this we must receive retribution. I tell you, I pray, let us suffer retribution, not from our enemies the Romans, but from the sovereign before whom we have sinned, for his torments are lighter. And let our wives die without reproach, and our children without servitude. Like them, let us also die nobly, granting favor to one another and keeping glorious the burial of our freedom. First, let us destroy by fire the citadel and our possessions. For in truth, I know how distressed the Romans will be if they do not become masters of our bodies and find no profit. Only let us leave the food to testify that we have not died by want or famine. We decided to take death before slavery. Eleazar's speech, Part 3. Life is merely suffering. No, thus spoke Eleazar, but his speech did not suit everyone. Yet some hastened to obey him, and were full of joy, considering it a noble death. But such of them as were weaker felt pity for their wives and families, and for their untimely end. Looking at one another, they sobbed, weeping, declaring they did not want to die. Eleazar, seeing that they were frightened and broken in spirit in face of the enormity of the decision, also became afraid that those weeping would weaken the resolute. So he didn't cease to exhort them, but plucking up his spirit and filled with enthusiasm, began with brilliant words to praise the immortal spirit. Sighing greatly and gazing at them with stern eyes, he said, Men, I have not grasped the truth. I had thought of you as lovers of freedom, who prefer to die rather than live under foreigners. But you were timid in heart, and you feared deliverance from great misfortune, when for that you shouldn't have lingered and awaited advisers. For from our first intelligence, we've been taught by the divine law of our fathers that life is a misfortune, but death gives us freedom, sends us to pure places, that they may remain there without suffering. But as long as it remain in the body as if bound, it will be filled with bodily suffering and, to put it bluntly, dead, for communion of a divine and immortal spirit with the mortal and earthly body is unbefitting. Eleazar's speech, number 4, invisible spirit in the body bloom. The spirit can do much being combined with the body, for it invisibly arouses it to action. But when it is released from the heaviness of earth and flies back up to its own place, then it's in touch with divine power, hindered by no one, and, like Elohim, unseen by human eyes. For while it is in the body, it is invisible, for it enters into invisibility, and invisibility again departs. It is incorruptible by nature, and it gives change to the body. For when it enters into it, the body blooms and is alive, and when it departs, the body withers and dies. This becomes clear from the example of sleep. For when the body falls asleep, the spirit, without disturbance, has sweet rest, and, being in itself, converses with Elohim as if he were a kinsman, and prophesies much about the future. But why are we afraid of death, loving the repose of sleep? Are we not senseless creatures if we seek a free life but neglect the eternal? We should have in ourselves given others also an example of disdain for death. Eleazar's speech, 5. They pass away with joy. If we need to be taught by foreigners, let us look to the wise Indians. They, the good men they are, live their lifetime without wishing it as a necessary service and hasten to separate their soul from their body. Craving immortal life, they announce to their near ones that they are about to depart. No one prevents them, but everyone blesses them and congratulates them, and each gives them a letter to his own long dead to take along. They, having heard what they are bidden, give up their bodies to the fire, that the pure soul may be separated from the body. And so, being hymned, they pass away with joy. And their near ones escort them to death and congratulate them for gaining an immortal rank. But why are we not ashamed as we neglect our ancestral law? Eleazar's speech, 6. World persecutions of the Jews. Even if men consider life a great good and death cruel, time calls us to good, pure-hearted suffering, bids us serve divine providence. For Elohim long ago imposed this judgment on the Jewish race, all to yield up life, because we did things we should not have done, and let no one say the Roman war destroyed us. For the higher power smote us because of our guilt and gave them the victory. Consider how our compatriots who were living in Caesarea didn't die by Roman arms, but while they were celebrating the seventh day. The people of Caesarea suddenly came running and killed them with their wives and children. Likewise in Scythopolis, and in the Syrian land, there's not one city where they did not kill the resident Jews. And in Damascus, what cause did the citizens have for killing thousands of them, apart from wives and children? And in Egypt, we've heard that 60,000 died of their torture and wounds. And in our country, did those who started the war have no weapons? Did they not have city fortifications? Did they not have walls and equipment? Had they not bravery or valor? Had the soldiers become few? No! Eleazar's speech. 7. Ways the Jews lived or died. There was plenty of everything, and for a short while they held out. And after that, all was captured and fell to the enemy. It's right to congratulate those who fell in the fighting, for they, resisting and not surrendering their freedom, died gloriously. And now their names are praised. Those who were taken alive, what sort of life do they have? Who doesn't pity them? Who doesn't weep for them? Or who will not pray to die first, rather than seeing or accepting such a death? For some of them perished in their bonds, others consumed by fire, others in torment from bad wounds, others fed to wild beasts, while some of their limbs severed by the animal's fangs. The remaining parts were kept alive for a second torture, as food for the beasts, for amusement, for play, and for the merriment of the enemy. That is why I believe the living have lost more than the dead. They often pray to die, but cannot receive this desire. Eleazar's speech. 8. We were born to die. Where now is the great city, the Jewish metropolis, fortified with such walls, possessing such powers, and hardly able to accommodate the great masses? Whereas the city gone, in which Elohim used to live, with his footers and his foundations, it has been seized. Only the camp of those who destroyed it is left as a memorial, and some doomed old men sit over the ashes of the temple. A few women suffer outrage. Who then, taking such to mind, will bear to look on the sun? Who is such an enemy of his country? Whoso loves life and is heartless enough still to wish to live? It would have been well for all to die first and not see the destruction of the holy city by enemy hands. But because we had confidence in deliverance from the enemy, our hope proved vain, and now we are left, the last, in this plight. So let us hasten to die well. Let us have pity on one another, on our children and wives, while we have the power to do so. For we were born to die, and those who are born of us were born for death. This even kings can't avoid. But outrage and slavery, and the sight of our women being led away to shame with the children, isn't something given by nature to man. But those who are fearful and mindless, and do not want to die before the evil prospect, they accept such agony. But we have prided ourselves on our courage, and rejected the Roman yoke, and have not hearkened to those who now call us to peace. To some, their fury is well known. If they take us alive, woe to the young, for their youth and bodily strength will suffer the greater torture. Woe to the old, for they will not have the strength to endure the coming torment. Woe to the women, suffering violent rape from their captors. Woe to the children, for they will drag them with hands tied, and weeping, and often calling on their fathers. Woe to the babies, for they will shatter them on the ground. For this reason, while our hands are still unbound and swords are in them, let them serve us fitting service. Eleazar's speech. 9. Desire for slaughter overcame them. Let us not die enslaved to foreigners, free to depart this life with our offspring and our women. Thus the law commands us. Thus our women and children implore us. Thus Elohim has sent us the opportunity. Thus the Romans do not want it, but are watching lest any of us die before capture. So let us hasten to forestall our expectation, so that instead of the gaiety they are hoping for in our capture, they will experience horror and marvel at our firmness of spirit. So while he was still ready to speak, they all hastened to their death. Filled with joy, as if possessed, they craved to forestall one another in the slaughter, regarding it as bravery and display of courage should one be the first to fall. Such a desire for slaughter overcame them, that with all their hearts they forgot their relatives, and together, embracing women and children, and giving a last kiss, and weeping, they cut them down, as if with alien hands. And no one flinched from that act, but they all slew their own like cattle.